On that October evening, when autumn mist rolled through the tobacco fields of Ashford Estate, and the scent of curing leaves hung heavy in the Virginia air, 3 men stood before Mistress Eleanor Ashford, not knowing that their lives were about to become a living hell from which there would be no redemption. For she had chosen them with the same cold calculation with which one selects livestock at market, and what she planned to do with them would haunt the halls of that plantation for generations to come. And if this story grips your heart, leave your like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, because what you're about to hear is the truth that polite society buried beneath layers of silence and shame. The Ashford Estate sprawled across 8,000 acres of prime tobacco land, 15 miles from the nearest town through forests so dense that screams could not be heard beyond the property line. An isolation that Eleanor's father had deliberately chosen when he built the plantation in 1820, creating a kingdom where he answered to no one. Eleanor was 32 years old in 1847, widowed 3 years earlier when her husband Thomas died in a riding accident that some whispered wasn't entirely accidental. She had inherited the plantation and its 200 enslaved souls, becoming one of the wealthiest women in Virginia, but wealth brought her no happiness, only a gnawing emptiness that she tried to fill with increasingly dark desires. Marcus was the first she chose. A man of 40 with intelligent eyes and hands skilled in carpentry. He had been brought from a plantation in North Carolina after his previous owner died, separated from his wife and 3 children whom he would never see again. Eleanor had him brought to work on repairs in the big house, and as she watched him work, she felt something stir within her. A hunger that had been growing since her husband's death. A need for control, for power, for the forbidden. The second was Benjamin, a young man of 23 who worked as a house servant. His mother was the cook, an old woman named Sarah who had raised Eleanor from childhood and loved her like a daughter, which made what Eleanor was about to do to Benjamin even more cruel, because it would destroy not just him but the woman who had shown her nothing but devotion. The third was Isaac, only 19 years old, newly purchased from a slave trader who brought him from the Richmond market. Isaac had been born free in Philadelphia, son of freed slaves who ran a successful bakery. But he had been kidnapped while traveling south to visit relatives, fraudulent papers created declaring him property. His desperate letters to his parents in Philadelphia went unanswered because they were destroyed by the overseer who knew what Mistress Eleanor had planned for this beautiful young man with skin like honey and eyes that still held the spark of freedom. It began on a night in November, when the first frost touched the ground and Eleanor summoned all 3 to the big house after dark, telling the overseer they were needed for moving furniture in the attic. But when they arrived, they found no furniture to move. Instead, they found Eleanor waiting in a room on the 3rd floor that no other slave had ever entered. A room that she had prepared with locks on the inside of the door and heavy drapes to muffle sound. "Gentlemen," she said, and the word sounded obscene coming from her lips, because they were not gentlemen. They were property, less than human in the eyes of the law. You have been selected for a special service. You will live in this room from now on. You will leave only when I permit it, and you will do everything I command without question or hesitation. Marcus found his voice first. "Mistress, please, what about my carpentry work? The barn needs repair before winter." Eleanor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The barn can rot for all I care. Your only work now is to please me. All 3 of you together whenever I desire." Benjamin's legs nearly gave out beneath him. He thought of his mother Sarah in the kitchen below. How could he face her knowing what he was being forced to do? And Isaac, who still remembered what freedom felt like, felt something inside him snap, felt the last connection to his former life dissolve like salt in water. That night was the beginning of their imprisonment. Eleanor would come to that 3rd floor room sometimes twice a day, sometimes not for several days, keeping them in a state of constant anxiety, never knowing when she would appear. She brought them food herself, good food, better than what the other slaves ate, as if trying to convince herself that she was being kind, that they should be grateful for her attention. But kindness was the last thing they felt as she made them perform for her entertainment, forcing them to compete for her favor, playing them against each other. "Marcus, you're so much stronger than Benjamin. Show him how a real man performs. Isaac, you're younger and more beautiful. Make the older ones jealous." Those who heard this story could not remain indifferent, just as you shouldn't. If this story touched you, leave your like so it won't be forgotten. Because what happened next reveals the depths of human cruelty when power goes unchecked. Weeks turned into months, and the three men lived in that room like animals in a cage. They were not permitted to speak to other slaves, not allowed to attend church services on Sunday, cut off completely from the community that might have offered some small comfort. Marcus began to lose his mind first. He would wake screaming in the night, convinced that demons were clawing at his flesh. He stopped eating, and Eleanor had to force food down his throat to keep him alive, because dead slaves had no value, and she wasn't finished with him yet. Benjamin tried to maintain some sense of dignity. He would recite Bible verses he remembered from childhood, would whisper prayers when Eleanor wasn't there, but the prayers felt hollow in that room that had become their hell. And slowly he too began to crack, began to understand that God had abandoned them, or perhaps that there was no God at all in a world that allowed such things to happen. Isaac, the youngest, surprised everyone by becoming the hardest inside. He stopped feeling anything at all, trained himself to leave his body when Eleanor used him, to float somewhere above the horror and watch it happening to someone else. He made a promise to himself that if he ever escaped, if he ever found his way back to Philadelphia, he would tell the world what happened in rooms like this throughout the South. He would become a voice for the voiceless, but that was a dream that seemed more impossible with each passing day. The discovery came not from another slave, but from Eleanor's own brother, James Ashford, who arrived unannounced from Richmond in March of 1848. He had heard disturbing rumors about his sister's behavior and came to investigate, and when he searched the big house, he found the locked room on the 3rd floor. What he saw when he broke down that door would haunt him for the rest of his life. 3 men, emaciated despite the good food, their eyes hollow, their spirits broken, and his sister Eleanor standing there in her silk dressing gown as if this were the most natural thing in the world. James was a practical man, and his first concern was not justice but family reputation. He could not allow this scandal to become public, could not let the Ashford name be dragged through the mud. So he made a decision that was perhaps more cruel than what Eleanor had done. He sold Marcus, Benjamin, and Isaac separately to 3 different plantations, as far from Virginia as possible. Marcus went to a rice plantation in South Carolina where slaves died within 3 years from disease and exhaustion. Benjamin was sent to sugar fields in Louisiana, and Isaac was sold to a cotton plantation in Texas, ensuring that even if they survived, they would never see each other again, never be able to corroborate each other's stories, never find justice for what had been done to them. As for Eleanor, James had her quietly committed to a private sanitarium in the mountains of North Carolina, a place that was more prison than hospital, where wealthy families sent their inconvenient relatives to disappear. She lived there for 11 years, and according to the nurses who attended her, she spent her days staring out the window and calling the names of Marcus, Benjamin, and Isaac, as if summoning ghosts that would never come. The room on the 3rd floor was locked and never opened again, and when James Ashford eventually sold the plantation in 1855, he made sure to burn all records that might hint at what had transpired there, but secrets have a way of seeping through walls and whispering through generations. They say that on autumn nights, when the mist rolls through the tobacco fields, you can still hear 3 voices singing in harmony from that 3rd floor window. A mournful sound that makes the blood run cold. 3 souls who were imprisoned, violated and scattered to the winds, forever bound together by the horror they endured. And if this story made your heart beat faster, go now to the channel and subscribe to discover the other voices that time tried to silence. Because only by remembering the past can we build a future where no love is forbidden by the color of skin, and no life is worth less than another. Where freedom and dignity are not privileges, but rights that belong to every human being simply by virtue of their existence on this earth, we all share.